So I'm going to talk about locally relevant research with global impact, and I'm going to take you through my own personal journey and really go through some of the things, that advice that I would give to somebody, in my position a few years ago, some of those things that I wish somebody had told me earlier in life. You can go to the next slide. And so my story basically starts off when I graduated from UKZN at the medical school in 2005. And at that time, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. Mainly in medical school, everyone is encouraged to become a specialist. And so I didn't really want to go that route. But during my community service here, after, I enjoyed working in the labor ward, and it was an exciting place because you experience childbirth, you experience the joy, you see the joy that the mother has when you deliver a healthy baby and hand them over to the mom, the dad, the family. But at the same time, working as a doctor in that space, and this was in rural KZN, you also experience the opposite side, where a baby has died, a mother has died, and you have to be the one that basically informs the family about what has happened. And so it was both an exciting time and a very painful and taxing time for me. But with all of that, I decided that I wanted to specialize to become an obstetrician and gynecologist. After specializing, I decided I'm going to do my master's PhD. And what I wanted to look at was why women dying from bleeding during and after cesarean section. And so the day I decided I wanted to do my PhD, I wrote to a potential supervisor, and my question was really, would you be keen on supervising me? And he basically said to me, come to me with the research question and then we'll work it out. So from the beginning, it was, find something that you feel is important to you and we'll turn that into a PhD. And just in retrospect, it was really jumping into the deep end, but what helped was that I was able to look at what is pertinent in South Africa. And so at that time, the really important topical issue was the number of deaths from cesarean sections. And so it just made sense to try and understand the problem that the country was grappling with at the time. Many people may have not known about it, but particularly from the obstetric and midwifery community, it was quite evident then that the number of women who were dying from complications of cesarean section had increased dramatically in that time. And so solutions were required. So after completing my PhD, I then went overseas, spent a year at the Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and did a postdoc fellowship. And part of the decision to do that was also feeling that I needed to be in a space where I could grow and develop as a researcher and really grow from where I was, because already having a PhD as a medical doctor, I found there was a lot of pressure to lead and be the one that is, training and teaching aspiring and upcoming researchers. But I didn't feel very confident with my own abilities at the time. And I remember there was a time where I really made the decision that I needed to go spend time in a cutting edge research institution, and so that I could develop and grow as a researcher, and later onwards being able, so that I could mentor and others. So I am currently, last year I was appointed as the head of global surgery at the University of Cape Town, and that's my everyday job. But this is just kind of the journey and that I wanted to talk to you about today, and how, it wasn't planned out that, at some stage in my life at 34, I want to go to Harvard Medical School. But one thing led to another, and this is where I've kind of ended up in a leadership position, really leading an emerging discipline. Next slide. So talking about my actual research, and so, I mean, this was the first paper we published, my first opinion piece, which we published in 2017. And if you see the title, it was Increasing Caesarean Sections in Africa Could Save More Mothers' Lives. And we had really picked up that whilst the world is talking about the excess number of women who require a caesarean section, but in reality, women in Africa, the excess number of women who are having caesarean sections that shouldn't be. In Africa, the reality was that there were places where women who needed a life-saving caesarean section were not able to have one. And so we wrote about the unmet need for safe caesarean section and really became advocates for that. But this came later with part of the research that I was doing in the African Surgical Outcome Study, where we then discovered that African women were 50 times more likely to die from caesarean section complications than women in high-income countries. And so you kind of had this picture almost contrasting. On one hand, you're saying women need more caesarean sections. On the other hand, you're realizing that those who are having the caesarean sections are dying from complications of caesarean section. Next slide. And so this all led to me moving into this new field called global surgery, which is really about improving surgical outcomes through comprehensive and equitable surgical care in vulnerable populations. And it's really about looking at what happens outside, not just inside the hospital, but outside of the hospital, and how do you improve surgical outcomes by strengthening health systems. And so I'm going to move more and become speak more as a scientist, but I thought it will be helpful to give my background so that you could understand how all of this has evolved. Next slide. So if I could describe my journey, my life as an individual, I really started off as a clinician, and it was really about treating the patients in front of me, service delivery, and rising up the ranks, starting off from a junior doctor up till I became a specialist. But somewhere in the process, I was introduced to the world of research. And suddenly, you've been trained to be a clinician. That's all the training you've received. But you start seeing that there are gaps in your field that could be answered through research. And so that's how I moved into this place of becoming a clinician scientist and wanting to be in both of these worlds at the same time. But that also then leads you to leadership and policy. And so, as you know now, my work speaks into policy, and it speaks into decision making and how do we influence change at a larger scale. And so it's been quite juggling all of these things, and at sometimes having to put down one and focus on the other. But, it's never a straight path. You walk into one thing and find that, there's a need for scientists, there's a need for policymakers, there's a need for leaders. Being a leader in a surgical discipline where there is a shortage of a dire shortage of leaders, women leaders, just in academia, in the surgical disciplines. So it's my life has really transformed from when it was really just about becoming a clinician or a surgeon or an obstetrician, providing service delivery, to really a leadership space and trying to look at health systems and trying to find solutions. But at the same time, all of these things don't also bring other opportunities and things. And so the last picture is really highlighting the importance of advocacy and how part of my life now is juggling between policy, health system strengthening, and advocacy, and suddenly you find you were trained in a hospital to deliver surgical care or to deliver obstetric care. And suddenly you find yourself in platforms where you have to talk about much broader things. And from being a scientist, you then start becoming regarded as an expert, as a thought leader. And, part of it is you having to manage, what do I really want to be? Because all of these things all of these opportunities open up to you, but you also can't do everything perfectly well. And so that this sums up where my life is. Next slide. But having said all of that, all of what I do is really about saving lives. And I've had, I always find the comfort and the joy in knowing that whether I'm seeing patients on a day-to-day basis, or whether I'm dealing with policies that affect patient care, or whether I'm doing research that is going to answer important questions, it's all about saving lives. And so my commitment in all of this is really about being part of the process that is going to improve healthcare and save more lives. Next slide. So, of course, the challenging question as you navigate and think about your career is do I want to become a scientist and develop my science, or do I want to become a leader in the field? And many of you will experience that, once you start getting recognized as a scientist, it's almost like leadership opportunities just start opening far and wide, and people suddenly want to make you, an executive leader, but no one ever trained you for that, and the juggle or the big question has been, can one be all of these things, or do you have to choose? And I think for myself personally, I value my science, and I think I love the science that I do, because I feel that is where I can leave a real legacy. But at the same time, being a leader in my field, I'm able to open more doors. I'm able to be an enabler for more science to happen, for more people to get into the field who would have not automatically been accepted into these spaces. And so you do find the difficult things that you need to interrogate and maneuver around is the decision of who and what you want to be as a scientist, because you walk into a profession and suddenly doors open that you never expected, that you did not anticipate, and you start being regarded as a leader. And the more you get into leadership positions, the less science you're able to do. And so it's very important to have those honest conversations with yourself and define what your passions really are, and so that you decide where you're going to put your energy and your time. And there's no wrong or right answer. I think all of us are different, and all of us must acknowledge what our different skill sets, different strengths, and that way you know where to focus on. So next slide. So for the next few minutes, I'm really going to talk about how you navigate a career in science, and going back to my original topic, talking about local leadership, locally relevant science, and making a global impact, because that also just sums up my own personal journey. What I did was I found a problem that was relevant, a problem that was there in South Africa at the time, and did my research around that. But with time, over time, what I then found was that that the problem that I was trying to solve was not only in South Africa, it was in other parts of Africa. It was an important problem that the world needed to solve. And so that trajectory has really moved me towards becoming a leader in my field, becoming an expert in my field, not just locally, but globally as well. Next slide. So my first point and my first tip for anyone who wants to navigate a career in science is find a local problem that you want to solve. We discourage people from walking around with solutions, looking for problems. Look around and look at, what do my people need? What is lacking where I come from? What needs to be dealt with? What needs to be addressed? And as you choose anything from PhD topics to research topics, it needs to be based on a local problem that needs a solution, because research is really all about solutions, finding solutions and implementing solutions. Next slide. Find mentors and supervisors that believe in you. And I think for me, that was the big difference maker, finding a supervisor who really believed in me, who encouraged me, who was patient with me, who understood when I had my own challenges that we had not anticipated. And so often we want to look for experts in the field to be our supervisors and mentors, but sometimes it's really that person who believes in you and sees the greatness in you that is going to get you further than working with the A-rated scientist in the field. So it's important that you choose carefully who your mentors are going to be, who your group is going to be, because you want to work with people that are going to harness the talent that you have inside of you. Next slide. Find an institution where you will thrive. Often we end up somewhere. Opportunities come. It might be I moved to Johannesburg because of marriage. My husband had moved to Johannesburg, and I needed to then, I wanted to be close to him and had to move from Limpopo up to Johannesburg. But in that space, then I got into VITS. I was able to specialize, do my PhD, etc. But as you decide where you want to go as a scientist, it's important to make sure that it's a place that accepts you, that sees the greatness in you, that sees your talent, your skills, and provides a platform for you to grow, develop, and to excel. A lot of people find themselves in very toxic environments where they are not even able to do the research that they want to do, where where even just getting through submitting a proposal to do research, it will be rejected, it will be criticized, So it's important to understand that where we work needs to take out the best in us, and we need to choose carefully. And sometimes we do need to make the difficult decision to leave when we feel uncomfortable, but most importantly, find a place where you're happy, where you're able to grow, and where you're able to thrive. And if you aren't, ask yourself very important questions, because ultimately it's your life. You've only got a few years to live, and if you're dedicating your time, effort, commitment in a place that doesn't want you to succeed, you're not going to make a difference. You're not going to achieve as much as you want to. Next slide. Use your solution to solve global problems. And so I spoke about solutions at the beginning, and this is just to make the important point that, once you've done that first study, you're now in a place where you're starting to understand that this problem is not just in my local village. It's a problem that is there in other parts of the world. You start using that knowledge to start doing other research related to the same topic in other places, collaborating with other people. And that way you start becoming an expert in your field, you start becoming a global leader. And ultimately that's what you need to become, an independent researcher, a global leader in your field. That's the highest ranking when it comes to research, when people from other parts of the world call you when they need solutions about something. And that's part of the work that you do as well in developing your niche. So having a niche is important. You need to be remembered for something. You need to be remembered for being a leader in your field. We shouldn't be jumping from research topic to topic to topic, but rather enhancing the research that we've chosen and building on it, so that you remembered in that field and your body of knowledge starts to grow in that field. And final slide. So develop a research program or an entity. You need to build your legacy. And so as people that are really passionate about science, technology, mathematics, being scientists, it's not just about getting publications out. It's also about developing a legacy. It's about supervising students. It's about building, things like building a research group. It's before I would be doing my own research on cesarean sections. Now I work with groups on cesarean sections. I work with other people from other parts of the world that are trying to answer the same question, and that builds a legacy. So we should be very careful from just being publication focused and being promotion focused. We need to be careful from simply taking that route to looking at what am I building, what is my legacy, what am I going to be remembered for, and start building up that legacy. And in my experience, developing a research program or a research entity is one way that ensures that you remain in the field, you grow, you've got a body of knowledge that has grown, you've contributed to science, and you've made a difference. So in short, that is my talk on this, and I hope I've done justice to the topic that I've been given. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful chat. It was lovely hearing about your journey, taking us through how you managed to blend the science, the policy, and your leadership. One key thing that I loved in one of your slides that I took away was how you said that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So I think it's really important, because I think sometimes we can get caught up trying to do a lot of things to reach where we want to get to. But I think just doing it one at a time, and sometimes you also have to focus and not look at other people's journeys. So you just stating that was absolutely brilliant. So now I am opening up the Q&A session. Before I get into it, just reading through some of the comments on Twitter and on the stage chats. People are loving your story. You are incredibly inspiring. So many people can resonate. I think I saw a person who also said that they are also UKZN graduates, also working in the similar field. So I think that's a great opportunity for her to connect with you. And anybody else who's actually interested, you remember you can connect with Prof during the network sessions that we're gonna do soon. So the first question that I have is from, and I apologize if I say the name wrong, Duraj. He says, how can someone be the one to connect scientists and leaders to enhance the lives of underprivileged people?
Thank you for everything that you've just said, and thank you to Duraj for this question, because it's important, and I'm happy you've touched on this, because this is something I'm quite passionate about. It's what difference is our research making? We can do all the research, have all the publications, get awards and everything, but if it's not making a difference, it's not changing the lives of people. I always say that, fine, people have been doing research in Africa for so long, for so many years. People have got Nobel Prizes, even for their research that they did in Africa. But we still have the highest, the lowest life expectancy, the highest number of preventable deaths. And so we need to ask ourselves, is the research that we're doing improving the well-being, the lives of people, and not just health-related, but in any field, and it's an issue of social justice, that using research to improve equity, to create equity it's an important tool that we need to. And it starts with us as researchers understanding our local problems and wanting to make a difference, because ultimately anyone can choose what topic they want to do. I could do research on anything, but for me, I felt that mothers cannot die unnecessarily. We cannot keep work. I didn't feel comfortable just saying that it's okay every now and then, this is the status quo. I felt that I want my research to touch on these things, and I may not make a difference immediately, but at least I know that I've devoted my effort and time and research into it. So social justice needs to drive our research plans, programs, the sustainable development goals. That needs to be the core of our agenda setting. And there is an important place for discovery research, and let's find new things. But it needs to improve the well-being of people, and the most underprivileged need to be at the top of that list when we choose our research.
That's absolutely important. Having research that impacts people, that in the long run, I think you even mentioned it in your talk, that the reason why you love science so much is that you said that that's where your legacy is. And that's where you can leave a lasting impact, that even after all these years, somebody can say, Prof. Salome was the one who pioneered this. So I absolutely love that you brought that up. So the questions are coming in quick and fast. I'm going to take us to the next one. This is from Elvis. He says, how does one deal with institutional culture when you do research away from your environment of comfort? And when you answer this question, he also wants to know further, how was your experience in the USA having done your graduate program? I think that, yeah, that's very important.
So institutional culture is something that I discovered when I was overseas. I just thought, you work where you are and you make it work and you deal with it. But I remember attending a workshop which was on social intelligence. And so, I knew about emotional intelligence, I knew about IQ, but I didn't know about social intelligence. And social intelligence spoke more to institutional cultures, ensuring that an institution on its own has got its culture. And some of us will fit in and some of us won't, And so, and I had to have my honest conversations with myself to say, where would I be able to thrive at this stage of my life? Where would I do well? And so it's important that we don't, in understanding ourselves and our passions, we also understand our institutions and what they have to offer us and what we can offer within our institutions, And so it's I may not be answering your question directly, but I think it's institutional culture. It's understanding that we walk into places that have already got a culture and a legacy. We are walking into things that have been built 300 years, whatever. There's legacy, there's cultures that are there. And, ultimately, it's the institution that will decide whether we are fit for them or not. We don't walk around trying to change every institution unless you're in a position where you can. But I realized I had to be honest with myself in certain areas that I'm on my own. I can't change the culture of this place. It's just too deep, too far ingrown, and there are things that I cannot change. But I can find places where I can thrive, and rather spend my time in those places. And you find that you are much happier. You're doing the same thing you were doing, but you're happier, you're accepted, you're given a space to grow, to thrive, So institutions can really make or break you, unfortunately, and it's not enough to say be resilient. We should not be resilient. We should be thriving. That's what we want. We're not here to teach people to have a thick skin. I have a thick skin. I've developed it. But I think there's a problem where all we are trying to tell people is get a thick skin and put up with whatever you get. No, there are places where you can do well without having to have bodyguards and all sorts of things protecting you. And then how I did in the US, I really loved it. I was there for 1 year, but for the first time, I felt like I met people that were thinking like me, people who were ambitious, passionate about what they're doing, trying to change the world, trying to disrupt. And it may just be that group of people that I was working with, but I really felt like, for once, I felt like I really fitted in here. And so that even made my decision of where to go, after the US easier, because I realized that you can be in a place where you fit in, where you thrive, where you're happy, where you're supported. And we don't need to push the culture of just stay there and suffer, you'll be fine. We need to change some of these narratives.
I think it's very important, especially like we have a global audience now. There's so many Africans who go to various countries and various spaces, and sometimes the institution is not that welcoming, unfortunately, but because you want to pioneer your research and for your CV and for publications, you have to be in that space. So I think lucky are those who are able to find the space like you did, where you thrived. It's unfortunate that there are some spaces where it's very difficult and you have to fight more than just your research, because that alone is difficult. I think we all know that. So yeah, it's really good. Thank you, Elvis, for that question. The next question is from Cosnet. They ask, at what stage is it advisable to decide on your niche? Could one ever choose too early? Because the more you grow, the better you know.
So thank you, Cosnet, for that question. It's a difficult one, because I always still have to remind myself that I'm doing research in Africa as a scientist in Africa, where we don't have a wide pool of researchers doing, all sorts of research here, and so we don't have the luxury of saying, I'm only going to look at cesarean sections and that's it. We often have to do a bit more than our niche. But having said that, it was important for me to also identify what I wanted to be remembered for, and that question you can come at any stage of your life. You can ask yourself that question, that, what do I want the world to remember me for? And when I came to that place, I knew that maternal health, making a difference in women's health, especially pregnant women, that was what I wanted to be remembered for. Reducing mortality across women, across unborn babies, that was something that I wanted to be remembered for. And then the rest then falls into place. And as when someone comes to me, says, let's do a study on fourth industrial revolution, something, I always think twice. I'm like, okay, does it fit in? But someone who comes to me and says, yeah, let's do a study on data science in pregnant women, then I'm like, that lines up. So yes, as Africans, we have to do more, but you can't be known as the research person and any research topic is brought to you, you're not going to grow. You're not going to develop your legacy, because you need to show, like I showed that when I started off, it was, bleeding during Caesar. That's what we wanted to know. And then a few years later, what we realized was that women in Africa are not having cesarean sections. And that was like phase number 2. Phase number 3, women in Africa are dying from cesarean sections, So now phase number 4 is interventions. What can we do? We need to build this portfolio. We can't be hopping around here, there, and everywhere. But it's I think having those honest conversations early in your career is possible, whether it's at master's or PhD level, with a bit of flexibility. I still juggle between stillbirth research and cesarean section research, because I love the placental side. I love the basic sciences side that I don't get from the cesarean section side of things. And honestly, after I did my PhD, I felt like I needed a break from cesarean sections. So we all human, at the end of the day. And so nothing wrong in putting your fingers, dipping into a bit of other things, but don't do everything and be in everything. You're not going to grow.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Dip your fingers, but also learn how to say no. You can't, like, I love how you said that. That's a very tough one, learning how to say no, because sometimes opportunities just come left, right, and center, and you think you have to do it all. And also, I think for your mental sanity, you kind of have to have a focus. The last question
And
before.
maybe just to add on that, I mean, I am, unfortunately, I'm a yes person. I'm not even a no person, but you know, and you can read about the psychology of yes, and the, you know, the power of yes. But I also know that I don't have to be the one that does everything that I say yes to. So if someone says to me that I want to do something on data science, you know, yes, let's accommodate it. But I don't need to be the PI for that study. We can allocate it to somebody who is passionate about that. And so sometimes it's not just saying no, it's also just, you know, let's find the right person for this.
Yeah, that's true. Delegation is also very important. Just the last question quickly before we shut off our Q&A. This is from Clive. He wants to know, Prof, what is your take on transitional research in Africa? And what is your opinion on what has left us trailing behind on the aspect of precision medicine research? So I'm going to have to rush you on that one if you can make it quick. I know it's a big chunk, but yeah.
Yes, I mean it's and I won't even delve too much into the answer because I feel there are so many areas of research that as Africans we are left behind and that we need to catch up, you know. But it's also about finding the right people, creating the spaces, and making it a priority. You know, my research is more on surveillance and understanding, you know, big picture. What are the numbers, what's happening, population health, you know, but there's a very important place for precision medicine, and you know, we all ultimately have to work together. So I think it's the important, my answer would be, let's leave no one behind, you know, especially on our continent. We need to do important research across many fields and grow the next generation of scientists across the board.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Prof, for taking the time to address us. It was lovely having you as our keynote address.